Stanley's background in photography stood him in great stead to become gifted with the frame of cinematography. Through his stills photography, he learnt about what each lens does, what it can do, and how to use it in his composition. And he was incredibly good with composition.
He was very interested in the lenses, the cameras, and very aware of that. I think he always saw a lot of it as a stills photographer.
It's an obsession to get it perfect. His focus is perfect, composition is perfect, and lighting is perfect. It was his signature, really.
It's great to be fine.
Stanley's philosophy is simplicity. Although he was very keen on his technology, he often said, I wish I could just get in a car with a couple of people and go off and make a movie. Minimal crew. You're working, there were only just a handful of people around, or very few people around.
He was a great friend of the camera crew. Stanley would make a connection purely for knowledge. If he knows that you're knowledgeable, and there was nobody more knowledgeable than dear old Gilbert with photography. To me, Gilbert Taylor was probably one of the finest cinematographers, and especially black and white cinematography. He just understood it. He understood the whole lens and light situation.
Is being acknowledged, Roger, by...
Motion picture black and white, I believe, is the hardest photography. You don't just turn the colour off. The big challenge with black and white is getting the depth in black and white. If you light black and white softly, with soft light, flattens the picture out completely. If you want to make somebody coming out of the shadows, it's creating the shadows for people to come out. And directing your vision at the time to a part of the picture.
Colour would have ruined Dr. Strangelove. I think it had to have that harshness about it, which the black and white did, more factual, more documentary look to it, which it did. Colour would have made it pretty, which it was not.
Stanley's the biggest tinkerer of lights of all time. He would tinker with every lamp, and he knew exactly how much that lamp was going to do. And he would work with the gaffer cinematographer. They would work together, but he would dictate the style of light. Mainly it was practical light. He was the big practical light man, really.
Stanley Kubrick was very fond of just having practical lighting and using the lighting that would naturally appear in sets.
Fred, Buck, what's it look like?
It gives a natural atmosphere to things rather than hard directional lighting. I mean, it's given a much more natural atmosphere to things, I think. Also, light like that works well in almost every direction, which I think Stanley knew. Hence, I mean, the war room, the big screen behind providing some light, and the big circle overhanging the table was very much a part of the illuminating the actors and illuminating the scene without any ancillary lighting.
Our way of life, I suggest you get the rest of SAC in after them.
Stanley was courageous about letting it go black, letting it go dark. You can hide the sets better in black and white. The war room, the magic of that scene is the blackness, the art of having no light.
Deliver us from the forces of evil.
Excuse me, sir. Premier Kissoff's calling again, and he's hopping mad.
Stanley's preference of lenses is clever in a way because he understands what the picture will look like in a cinema. And he could understand, as if he was sitting in the best row of the cinema, what he wanted to see on the screen. And generally that's got so much information going on, he would work with wide-angle lenses a lot more than a lot of people do. And that's why the war room looks great, because it was on a wide-angle lens, made it look really big.
Coming from still photography and always completely unusing the camera, I think he'd like to have been an operator in a way.
He wanted to work the geared head. A geared head is hand wheels, and it's a very precise movement, but you can repeat the movement because it's either 3 turns or 2 turns. You can repeat that shot. I don't like saying it, but he had a bit of trouble with that. He always, like Kelvin Pike, who is a great camera operator, and Stanley would always do the line-up and everything, but in the end, Kelvin would be the operator.
There's a lot more to camera operating. It sounds like just sort of sticking your eye to a camera and that's it. There's a whole relationship with, particularly with the director, certainly with actors and the DP, the whole crew. You are a crucial point of the whole production.
You're gonna let that lousy commie punk vomit all over us like this?
You're very involved in construction, very aware of editing, very aware of acting and that.
Try B86543 Moscow.
Yes, sir.
One great thing of working with Stanley was you work with him, you didn't work for him. And you're working very closely behind the camera with Stanley, and people like George G. Scott in front. We'd do a scene, a shot, and a cut. I'd turn to Stanley and say, I don't think he looked, looked a bit peculiar the way he was looking like that or something. What do you mean, Kelvin? And I said, well, tell him. I can't tell him, Stanley. You're the director. Tell him. George, Kelvin thinks you didn't play that too well. Oh, don't. He'd put you straight into it.
President, we're wasting valuable time. Look at they going. They're getting ready to clobber us.
He respected you. He respected your opinions and your work, which was wonderful.
Mandrake, water is the source of all life.
The scene in the office with Sterling Hayden and Peter Sellers discussing bodily fluids. I think a major part of that scene was a lot of my suggestions, actually.
And as human beings, you and I need fresh, pure water to replenish our precious bodily fluids. Are you beginning to understand?
A good cameraman will work with the director for the feeling of the movie, not just light a scene. Gilbert, because he was from the RAF, he used to fly those aircraft.
Major Kong, I know you think this is crazy, but I just got a message from base over the CRM 114. And he called his wing attack for an hour.
And so that's why the whole thing looks so real. He created that feeling inside those aeroplanes.
Wing attack plan R?
I worked with Gil as an assistant for a number of films, and I operated one with him, Prize of Arms. The scenes in the aircraft flying was a physical challenge, really. The flying over the Arctic, Iceland, Greenland, North Canada. Because we were far north, we've only got about a couple of hours of daylight, so we weren't carrying oxygen, so we were flying up 10,000 feet or something, which it was hard work, and you were quite tired at the end of the day, but it was 2 hours hard work.
This is your attack profile?
Oh, the special effects, the aircraft flying and everything else. We had the matting of the exterior scenes, but the camera had to be interlocked with the background scene. You have a camera and your foreground scene in the aircraft cabin. Through the windows, there's the background of the scenery, of the alpine scenery passing by, which is on a screen in the studio, and you require that to be synced in with what you're shooting on the camera in the foreground. Interlock the frames together. Otherwise, if they did not interlock, you'd have blank bits in the background and you're shooting the foreground.
12,000 feet.
So the camera was particularly heavy, and also we wanted to keep a sort of fluid movement with it. So physically handling that as an operator was that was a physical challenge, really.
Most motion pictures were only filmed with one camera. I'm fairly sure it would have been a two-camera system. It would have probably been an early Arriflex camera and a Mitchell BNC camera.
One was a sound camera, one was a wild camera, and handheld camera,
Gilbert was an incredible handheld photographer. That was his game. And Stanley was a handheld photographer because he loved the what was called the 2C Arriflex, which is a tiny camera that was handheld. And it was a combat camera, really. And the magic of handheld photography is really wide-angle lenses, very close. Because at that point, the wide-angle lenses doesn't give you the jerky movements that people do in handheld today.
Stanley was trying to make the scene as real as possible. In other words, they were pretend fighting, or they were fighting, their guns were firing and it was happening, and we as cameramen were like usual cameramen, going there and just pointing the cameras and wherever we thought was right. Actually, physically on the ground, lying on your tummy and wobbling around, of course, which was giving the appearance of war photography, of war cinematography, the rough, bad operating, if you like.
And it is a conscious decision about styles, because you've got the American war room, you know, being glamorous and nitty-gritty fighting. That they actually blend not together but against each other. You've got the erratic style of handheld photography and the glamour, which was Hollywood glamour, really, of the war room.
When they come out in 100 years, they could take over.
They're all images on a screen, like painting or something. You see different paint or different material.
Extremely nigh to us, Mr. President, to us.
One's a battle scene and one's an office scene. They they're bound to look different, but they are part of the story.
Stanley made that look like an epic movie, but on regular 35mm film. It's just perfect. It's just perfect.
I think it was a great film. I'm seeing it again recently. I've forgotten the amount of humour in it as well. I'm just laughing out aloud at some of the scenes. It was really bringing the sort of farce of the situation down to life, down to level.
Monsieur!
And the whole atmosphere of it, the acting and Stanley's work on it, I think it was fantastic.
Meet again, don't know where, don't know where.